So in this video, we're going to be talking about how Performance Max functions. Is it good? Is it bad? Why to use it? When to use it? Sort of what to look for. And so we're going to jump right into it. So the biggest debate right now is when you run Performance Max, some people say, oh, it's amazing. Some people say, oh, it's terrible. And the reality just comes down to it's very situational. Now, from what I've seen, it's been bad at scaling 99.99999% of the time, right? So when you scale up Performance Max, it doesn't necessarily grow your business, even though it might look better in the ad platform itself. And there's a very obvious explanation for that, but I just want to cover the one use case of it actually working from a scaling perspective, which comes down to if you're a brand new business, you have no other channels, no other marketing channels whatsoever, really small, and you're like, hey, this is all we're going to do. We don't really have an LTV. We're just trying to get, sales, trying to scoop up whatever sale, whatever sale we can do, depending on the actual, medium. Since Performance Max goes after all the mediums inside of Google, it's very good at finding that demand. So I have used it in very small accounts early on, and it's worked really well to get them to a larger spend level to then say, okay, let's add on this campaign type. Let's go into this medium. Let's work on our LTV now. Let's, try to emphasize more sort of larger business strategies, not necessarily just trying to be profitable on day one kind of thing. So, and the audience is obviously big enough then for remarketing lists, and that's where the LTV comes in a profitable rate too. So anyways, that's kind of the use case that I've seen it work when it comes to scale. The other use cases that I've seen it work have only been in remarketing or in bottom of funnel, where people have another campaign, another system at play, whether it's Meta, or they're running TV ads, whatever the case is, and they're running that in conjunction with Performance Max, and Performance Max is remarketing those users, right? So you have, let's say, a really, really big campaign on, you're spending tons of budget on Meta, and so you have all this awareness being built up, but they're not converting, or you find that, hey, we need to just get in front of these people more because they're going on Google, they're going on YouTube, and we want to still be top of mind, and we want to, obviously try to capture those people. And so what people will then do is say, okay, let's run Performance Max. They run it, it looks good, and you have your funnel built out, right? You have a cold traffic source, could be Meta, that's feeding Performance Max, and Performance Max is acting as that middle of funnel and bottom of funnel. That's worked really well. Now, the key indicator with Performance Max, though, is you are sacrificing a lot of your scalability when it comes to, if you're an e-commerce brand, shopping. So what we found is essentially, you'll have multiple campaigns typically with Performance Max. So it'll be like a cold search campaign with a, branded search campaign, and then Performance Max has brand exclusions, right? So you're trying to pull out as much branded searches into a separate campaign to have more control over it. It doesn't fully work all the time, but it works in most cases to pull out, I would say 95% of the time, it will pull out all that branded search traffic. Now, keep in mind that branded search traffic is not the full story though. It's just a portion of it, meaning that you could still have people that have heard of your brand, you get in front of them with another ad, and then they convert when they might have just, searched you up organically and converted. So it's all a profitability question when it comes to running Performance Max. And so a lot of people will try to influence it by running standard shopping as well. And this is kind of it doesn't really scale well. So like, for example, Performance Max is going to try to grab any sort of area that it possibly can, and we're assuming this is a feed-only Performance Max. And what it will do is it will say, okay, this shopping campaign's found an audience over here. Cool, I'm gonna now scoop up that audience. And then if you're on conversion-based bidding with shopping, you're going to slowly lose that audience to Performance Max, and the budget's going to drop, right? It's very hard to scale shopping on ROAS bidding when you have Performance Max inside of it. You could be on a 40% ROAS, and it's still going to try to steal that audience from you because it's like, hey, I want to take priority. It's just, Performance Max functions in that sense, right? Especially with standard shopping and a little bit with search. Now, cold search, I've seen actually do a little bit better at this, but there's still that fluctuation, right? You don't really have control over saying, hey, cold search is working really well for us, let's scale it up. You scale it up, and all of a sudden it shrinks, expands, it's not very consistent in terms of when you add budget and then the results you get out of it, right? It'll typically flow audiences inside of Performance Max, and then that's sort of like the main attributing campaign that takes all the credit for it. just because it shows to users again and again and again and again, right? And so what I typically like to do is I like to test out search and shopping first separately, without Performance Max, to then see if there's an actual space to grow on search or shopping, because then we can scale that up. You're still in the demand market, but you're able to control over who you're serving to, and you're not worried about the algorithm on Performance Max taking away credit from those other campaign types. Now, what I've seen though is, like, if you have a very low AOV, then obviously shopping and search is probably not going to be the best option for you, because they're very expensive CPCs. Now, it's good to test and see if the product works in the market, but it's not good for profitability on a very long-term scale when it comes to low AOV products. So with that being said, there's other strategies that involve Performance Max that are more outside of it. So like a YouTube campaign that, instead of it being, Meta, for example, that takes all the credit, or not takes all the credit, but, provides all the new users to Performance Max to then take all the credit. People will sometimes do YouTube as well, and they'll use Performance Max as sort of like that remarketing to, attribute portions to Google to then feed the algorithm to then help train YouTube as well as remarket them. So there's so many things that kind of work with Performance Max, but you have to understand that it's extremely aggressive as to what it goes after. You might say, oh, this is like, Performance Max looks amazing, it's got a really good ROAS, and then our cold channel just looks terrible. And this is why ROAS is not something that you can focus on. It's all about your P&Ls and incrementality, right? You want to say, okay, I scaled this up, we go from, I don't know, 100,000 to 120,000. We do a 20% scale, which, at that scale is fairly significant. So what that then means is saying, okay, when we scale this up, what does the combined picture of all this look like, right? What's the global ROAS, or what's all of the ROAS from all the channels put together? Because Meta is not going to attribute everything to itself. It's going to attribute to organic, to direct. It might even attribute to Performance Max, and that's totally fine, because it's further up in the user journey, not further down. The further down you go in the user journey, the easier it is to attribute value, which means the more deceptive it can be on the more bottom of funnel you go. That's why you see people that fall into this trap of scaling Performance Max, because it looks amazing, but it's so far down the funnel that when you scale it, it's like scaling a brand campaign, right? You can only scale the brand campaign as much as the awareness. And typically what that means is if you max it out in terms of scale, then your global, ROAS, or your global profitability diminishes, because you're just eating into all that. You're paying more for people that would have already gone through, the system and then converted, right? It's like email. If you run, a bunch of remarketing on Meta and Google, and it's going after repeat users, you're spending money on repeat users, which you could just show them, an ad every once in a while in like a very low frequency, just to stay top of mind, or, run an email marketing campaign to then, get those people to convert in a lot cheaper way. So all of this kind of comes into just the general, business model, right? Like higher LTV, way higher risk on Performance Max, because it's just going to attribute those repeat customers. Way lower LTV, meaning that you don't really see that much LTV. It's just one-off purchases. Performance Max is probably not going to fall as much into the warm traffic side of things, but it will fall into the remarketing side of things of new customers, right? So, or retargeting, I guess. I had a client that actually gave me that idea of how they look at it, and I like it. So think of it as, if you have no LTV, Meta, cold, scale it up. Performance Max is going to retarget those people in Meta, which haven't purchased, and then get them to convert, which could be good or bad. So anyways, I wanted to give you guys just kind of this general insight on what I see be just a large issue in the industry space. And this is why it's so important, so important to look at your actual bank account statements, because that's what matters. ROAS doesn't matter. So anyways, thanks again, guys. And if you have any questions, drop them below. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon.